This is your Drive Time News Blast. 30 minutes jam-packed with news of the day from the perspective of truth, liberty, and justice. This is Monica Perez.
And I'm Brad Binkley.
I think that we have done an excellent job covering this Ukraine situation, but the hits keep coming. Every day it's something new. Most of it is just a bunch of baloney.
Tweets and rumors. Breaking tweets and rumors.
I love that. I really have to get my glossary back on track, and breaking rumors is going to be one of your, I'm going to attribute it to your catchphrase. Well, talk about vague news. The headline in the Wall Street Journal, whistleblower expected to testify soon.
Ooh.
I know. And it's the first reference I've heard where someone refers to Xi as a he or a she. So Adam Schiff referred to the whistleblower as a he, which I do not actually think gets us closer to knowing whether or not it is a he or a she.
Well,
but
we
I've
certainly
noticed,
hope he doesn't misgender this person.
That's true. And maybe that will be a subplot. But I noticed both Lindsey Graham and Chris Wallace both said he or she. Why they didn't use the they grammatically incorrect but politically correct pronoun, I don't know. But anyway, so I just don't know. Anyway, so that whistleblower is going to supposedly testify soon.
Sometime soon. Very vague, like you said. The other latest developments related to that are, one, that they are trying to speed up the impeachment process, apparently, by focusing it only, instead of focusing it on the 40 or 50,000 list of lies that the Washington Post has for impeachment. They're focusing it only on the abuse of power by trying to allegedly force Ukraine to interfere in the 2020 election. And in response to these developments, Trump went on a tweet tirade, as CNN would call it. And they say that he tweeted that there's going to be a civil war if he loses. What he actually tweeted...
I saw that headline. Yeah, that I was wondering.
You will notice it's very hard to find the actual tweet in those articles.
I never saw the actual tweet.
Trump quoted somebody else, Pastor Robert Jeffries. He was on Fox News, and he said if the Democrats are successful in removing the president from office, which they will never be, it will cause a civil war like fracture in this nation from which our country will never heal. He didn't even say it was a civil war. Yeah, and he retweeted somebody else.
But it was Civil War-like fracture.
Civil War-like fracture. And
that is not the same as a civil war. It's very different.
That became the top trend on Twitter right now and all day today about Trump saying there's going to be a civil war if he loses. Just another way for them to go ahead and delegitimize it in people's minds. But on these Sunday shows yesterday, they were doing something really interesting. Is they were, on the one hand, telling their audiences, do not focus on the confusing disinformation about Joe Biden and his son and China and CrowdStrike, this ridiculous conspiracy about CrowdStrike and Ukraine.
Debunked.
Yeah,
debunked
this
conspiracy.
debunked
I did
conspiracy.
hear people say that. It's debunked conspiracy.
That CrowdStrike framed Russia, and they just totally... They say, we know all of this is confusing after they make it confusing. Don't focus on any of that, but what you need to focus on, what you need to state, what you need to be clear on is what we know. We know that the White House has already admitted that Trump abused his power by trying to force the Ukrainian president to interfere in the 2020 election by giving dirt on his political opponent, the very innocent, angelic, and godly Joe Biden.
The funny thing for me is, and this is going to come up probably several times just in our conversation today, not to mention the entire process of this thing, is that it's as if, to me, they framed this entire thing to, like, it's like the Trump versus Epstein thing writ large. Like, Epstein was about the Clintons, and they're making it about the Trumps. Everything they say that Trump did, they did. They actually went to, in 2016, they dug up dirt on Manafort, which got him to resign as campaign chair before the election. And Joe Biden admitted that he threatened to withhold aid if they didn't get the prosecutor fired. And then they also this is like gone back and forth a bit. They even told the new prosecutor who he could not go after, specifically the Soros organization over there, which we can talk about later. But they do all the things that they say they're not doing. And funny, Fox, which, as you have pointed out, does not do a great job covering this, did publish today a prank call it was on YouTube. Remember a while back when Elliot Abrams took over the Venezuela regime change operation?
Yeah.
And I played, which I pulled from a 21st Century Wire post, these Russian pranksters who called him and said that they were whatever trying to forget what they were doing on the Venezuela front, but they were pranking Elliot Abrams and got Abrams to tell them like, oh, we're just threatening military action. We could never take it, but we're just trying to whatever. We're doing other stuff. You remember that?
Yeah.
So these same guys, they're Russian comedians or radio hosts or something. They called Adam Schiff, who is this head of the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, and he's the guy who said the whistleblower is coming soon and all this. 2 years ago, this recording exists of them 2 years ago calling Schiff and saying, oh, there's this like Russian spy chick, honeypot, whatever, who has naked pictures of Trump that put him in a compromising position, which, because she is the granddaughter of Putin, he took seriously, and now Putin told him to lift the sanctions or they would release these pictures. So Adam Schiff was like,
yeah.
And the guys pretended they were Ukrainian. That's what's really funny, is that the Russian guys acted like they were Ukrainian, that they were pulling dirt on Trump from Ukraine.
Yeah.
And I think it's because they knew that the Democrats were already using Ukraine to pull this dirt. That is what they were doing. So it was a great prank call, and it's very clear that these guys, it's like accepting help from a foreigner in order to attack political rivals, which is exactly what they complain about.
I love a good prank call, especially when someone's just so eager
to
fight, just so eager to jump on anything that
it was just delightful. It's like, we're going to follow up and dot all the I's and get all the details, the spellings, the times and places.
Yeah, don't even verify the phone number. Don't verify who called. We love
this
information.
That's the funny thing, is that it clearly was not verified.
The miracles of confirmation bias are effective in prank calling for sure.
Yes. And you know what? Maybe they don't even care if it's valid. What do they care?
I don't think they do.
It does not rise to the standard of negligence, though. When we were talking about defamation the other day, that in my mind is negligent.
Yeah, it's totally negligent, but they don't care because they just want to push the narrative that they're trying to push, and they're pushing it really hard. A couple of the shows that I watched yesterday, one was Jake Tapper's State of the Union. I'll tell you about that in a second. The other was Brian Stelter, whose initials are BS, by the way. It's fitting.
Just like Shep Smith, Shep's the Shepherd's the Shepherd Smith, Shepherd's
yeah, exactly. Which, by the way, Zelensky sounds a lot like Lewinsky, Clinton's impeachment scandal, the president of Ukraine.
Is the president, yeah.
Yeah. So on Brian Stelter's show, Reliable Sources, most unreliable source on television, Robert De Niro was on as an interview guest, and he did not want to be there. He clearly didn't want to be there. He was looking around the whole time, not making eye contact with Stelter while he was doing the interview. It was like he was waiting for somebody to walk in who was trying to beat him up. He looked like he was nervous. His agent said, you got to go do Stelter's show this morning. We're going to promote your new movie, your gangster movie, and you're going to repeat these talking points about Trump because you've kind of become the tough guy. The tough guy who talks about how he wants to punch Trump in the face. And at one point in time, De Niro actually said, he's the worst president. He's even worse than I could imagine. But I gave him the benefit of the doubt on day one. I said, we'll give him a shot, which I went back and looked at the dates. Shortly before Trump was elected, De Niro did like a 1.5-minute video where he called him a bum, a loser, a POS. I want to punch him in the face. So I don't necessarily buy his story that he was giving him the benefit of doubt. But one of the interesting themes that De Niro brought in, which Stelter was prompting everything De Niro said. So Stelter would like tap on the desk and say, but do you think he's unfit for office? And then De Niro would go, oh, yeah, he's unfit for office. And Stelter would go, medically unfit? And De Niro goes, yeah.
I know where this is going.
I think he's possibly medically unfit. I mean,
know where this is going, although I don't see how it's relevant what Robert De Niro thinks about it.
Right.
Right? It's the 25th Amendment.
Yeah. And here was Robert De Niro's rambling explanation as for why Trump is medically mentally ill was the way that it was put. And he said, it's because I saw Trump out in front of the helicopter, when he was about to go somewhere, talking endlessly and sweating. Trump didn't ask anyone for a handkerchief, even though he was sweating so bad. He didn't even dry himself, and you just got to know, there's just something very strange about that. That was his explanation.
Wasn't he himself sweating on that? Like, I saw a little snippet of the Brian Stelter thing, and I'm just
he looked a little mentally ill, mentally ill.
He definitely looked deranged.
The pulling, like Stelter was going, what's the explanation? He obviously had something specific he was trying to get out of him, and he couldn't come up with any reasons to justify any of the blanket statements he was making about him that Stelter prompted him on. But ultimately, the message he delivered was that 25th Amendment type stuff. We're going to get back into that. And then that Trump absolutely must be impeached. Who has no other choice. There's no other way around. He's been the worst ever. He's done things even worse. He's a gangster. He's a gangster. And then Stelter goes, speaking of gangsters, you have a new gangster movie coming out.
Are you kidding me?
He's got to segue right into that.
I did not realize that. But the gangster thing, I figured that it was clear that they picked De Niro for this particular presentation because of his role as a gangster, which he was actually playing on the show, on the Stelter show. Here is the thing, that gangster thing is going to have legs, and I'll tell you how I know. So I remembered him saying something like that, or me having this thing about the whole gangster vibe that De Niro's delivering on Trump. And today, when I was reading the Wall Street Journal, there's an article on page A4 that says, Democrats warm to impeachment warily. And it says, Portia Sterling reached the conclusion that Mr. Trump needed to be impeached after she heard he had pressed Ukraine to investigate former Vice President Joe Biden, who is seeking the 2020 Democratic nomination. Mr. Trump's past behavior amounted to gangster stuff. But right now, it's our national security at stake, said the retired teacher seated in the shade before a Las Vegas campaign event for Mr. Biden, which was on Friday.
Yeah.
And the De Niro thing was on Sunday. So it's not like this. I was like, well, if she said it last night, then she just snapped to what De Niro was saying.
Yeah.
But unless De Niro was snapping to what Portia Sterling was saying, I am going to say this is not a coincidence.
It's
this
not
is the theme.
at all.
The theme.
And Netflix produced this movie. The Obama's Netflix, as Trump might call it.
Obamanet
produced this movie.
The De Niro thing?
The De Niro movie. Where De Niro plays like a 40-year-old or something. They do this digital stuff where they make him look really young and creepy.
No.
Yeah, I'm 40 in the movie.
No.
Yeah, that's what they do. They get him and Pacino, they reverse age them digitally, and now they get to do their younger roles again.
Wow.
Taking roles away from younger actors.
That. Because, and of course, I mean, they can do it after they're dead probably too, but they need to give Soros a couple of more years because in my opinion, George Soros is just the face of all this stuff, and they're literally scapegoating him. They're going to push all of this nefarious stuff into George Soros's even though Soros might be completely out of all of this, totally. I don't know who took his spot at the helm. David Axelrod, maybe. Who knows? I don't know. But if they can reverse age people, as you say, then the sky's the limit of exploiting an avatar, an icon, an image, a symbol. Symbols are so important. Villain symbols, hero symbols, very important. It's nice to be able to, get the most out of those. That's why I think Trump is going to get reelected. He's just too valuable, an icon, a lightning rod.
Yeah. And maybe we'll get De Niro playing a child or a baby in his next movie with this new technology. A little gangster baby.
A little like the baby that smokes a cigar on Bugs Bunny.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. You put De Niro and Pacino as babies inside
Babyface De
a
Niro.
daycare together. Yeah, and they run a organized crime in a daycare.
Kind of like the way the blind sheik runs the madrasas out of a U.S. prison.
You're going to give me those toy blocks right now.
Gives you some cover.
So there was a lot of themes that they were pushing along with those themes in the multiple shows. And I mentioned earlier, they're trying to cover up the CrowdStrike thing. They're trying to say that that's debunked. They're trying to say, don't listen to these confusing details. Just listen to the fact that Trump needs to be impeached, and there's plenty of evidence for it. Okay, so Jim Jordan, a Republican congressman, a former wrestler, and he goes after people a lot during testimony. Now, he was on Jake Tapper producing the other narrative. Actually, before I go into that, I did want to mention that De Niro twice said the F word, and they didn't bleep it.
That was
sources.
Outrageous.
And it was so prompt. Stelter, the camera, even the way the camera was set up was weird. And De Niro was looking off camera for cues the whole time.
Wow.
And Stelter goes, so Republicans, they, when you say things like Trump needs to be removed from office, I mean, the Fox News comes after you. I remember when you were on television swearing, and right on cue, De Niro goes, F them. F him. And then Stelter acts surprised, even though he just blatantly prompted him. And then
it was actually one of De Niro's worst performances. You tweeted it at Freedom House Radio. It was excellent. And I think it's getting retweeted like bananas.
I think after that poor performance by De Niro, that Beto.
Why do you call him Beta?
Because he's beta. He's a beta male.
Oh, cute. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cute. Oh, I'm putting that in my names. Just like BS is Brian Stetler.
Yeah, so he's in a competition between De Niro on who can say the F word on CNN the most in a believable fashion. I think De Niro lost some credibility yesterday.
Yeah, I have one thing before you move on, though.
I still got one point to make about that. He asked him why he uses that language, and he said, actually, he didn't answer. He said, Trump's just, and then Stelter goes, are you saying we're in a crisis situation? And he goes, yeah, we're in a crisis situation.
Line.
Yeah.
Line.
Yeah. So we got to say the F word because we got to start a revolution, and young people got to be free to swear.
Oh, my gosh. And I will say, I hope people remember, and if they don't, just listen to my show every once in a while. I'll say it again, that I absolutely highlighted the minute that this started when Vicente Fox said vulgarity, referring to Trump. I think it was February 2016. Or maybe it was 2017 after the inauguration, but I think it was 2016 during the campaign. I'm not sure. But I knew that it was a watershed moment on using vulgarity on the public airwaves, and furthermore, that they would blame Trump for it, for creating that atmosphere. And that is exactly what's happened. I mean, that was one of my top 5.
Yeah. Yeah, you nailed it. It's coming out again. Hardcore right now. And the Jim Jordan interview really reminded me of what... Oh, did you have something to comment on that?
Well, just one thing that is on this topic, but not related to that specifically. But what I heard, I will give credit where credit is due. I heard on Rush today, he said, and then I looked into it, and Lindsey Graham said it too, that they had just changed the rules to allow whistleblowers to refer to blow the whistle on hearsay. Did you hear that they had just changed the rules weeks before this happened?
No, I did not. But yeah. So what's the rule now?
So the rule prior to this, what longstanding rule that you could whistleblow, but only if you were the witness. But if it was just hearsay, if you did not witness the action, the words, or the act, then you could not file a whistleblower complaint through this process.
See, now that reminds me that one of the other themes they were pushing was the whistleblower protections not being that there was too many holes in the whistleblower protections, and that these other whistleblowers that are absolutely involved in this case, they say, are not going to be willing to come forward. And then they would say, for example, here's some of the problems with the current whistleblower law. And one of the examples was that it does not protect intelligence agencies' whistleblowers from criminal prosecution. So that's the problem with the whistleblower laws, they were saying on the news yesterday, is they would prefer that intelligence agents be free to whistleblow and not have to worry about being criminally charged, like,
so
say,
what
if
are
they're
you
lying, maybe?
Yeah, right. So you're just saying, like, this is just a whole new level of leaked emails, accidentally released FOIA. Like, because the news has no credibility at all, what they use as their sources now is simply stuff that it looks like was embarrassing or was an inside leak. Like, there's no credibility at government or media to actually have official sources or real evidence that people just won't believe it. So they only believe it when it's like, well, I read it in Hillary's secret email.
Yeah, and there's a UN whistleblower law that I think they're probably going to try and push for, which gives, don't quote me on this, I need to dig deeper in it, but from my cursory reading of it, it gives pretty much absolute protection to intel agency whistleblowers is what it seems like it would do to me, which is a terrible thing.
That just seems to me like another level of credibility they're trying to assign to pure propaganda.
Yes. I mean, what is this guy going to testify to in Congress anyway? I mean,
it's hearsay.
Yeah, it's all hearsay.
So when people are saying, who is the guy who told him, that is what everybody's saying. So it's not him, it's whoever told him. Like, that's the person you've got to get to.
But they say...
And that's probably a chick.
They might try... they say they might find that information out.
Maybe it's Gina Haspel. What?
They say that maybe that they're going to that he might tell them who it is, but so the whistleblower is going to blow the whistle on another whistleblower. I thought we're not allowed to reveal the. It's just stupid. The whole.
But
the
I
whole
feel
thing.
like I just think the gender thing's going to matter. So I feel like
think you're right.
It's going to be a high level chick is going to be the one who fed the whistleblower the dirt.
You always know in a movie when they're talking about like a vigilante or something that they haven't caught yet, and they say he. Well, you know it's going to be a woman.
Yes,
when they say that a whole lot. So
absolutely. Jim
Jordan was sent to Jake Tapper's State of the Union, and he went there to talk about how Joe Biden fired the prosecutor. The talking points from the right last week about Joe Biden firing the prosecutor to protect his son, and Jake Tapper, according to every headline, shreds Trump supporter Jim Jordan, who tries to defend his allegations against Biden, promoting debunked conspiracy theories. Jake Tapper just destroys them. And what Tapper was saying was kind of like what you were saying, but it was confusing the way it was coming out. As Tapper was flipping it on his head, he was saying, no, he didn't investigate Biden's son. That's not even who he was investigating. Therefore, the whole allegation is debunked. Because that's not true what you're saying.
And they're saying it's not only debunked, but it actually shows that Biden was above the politics and totally above board because he, despite the fact that it would hurt his son to investigate his son's boss, still he was pushing for that. It was pure virtue on Biden's part.
So I came away from the Tapper
interview
I
cracked
confused.
The code on that.
Yeah, I know. I came away confused, and they were intentionally trying to confuse so that they could then say, don't focus on this. Only focus on this simple thing. Trump's guilty, Biden's innocent, impeach. So if you could clarify.
Yes. So this is what happened. Friday night and Saturday morning before the WSB show, I was trying to crack the code on this because of that exact detail. They kept saying he was getting rid of the prosecutor who was after his son's boss. And I just kept being confused like you were, right? It just did not make sense unless there was this level of virtue on the part of Biden that's unheard of in politics. So I even didn't pull on that thread because I was just like, okay, virtue, fine. Then I noticed that Hunter Biden's business partner, Devin Archer, was seated on the Burisma board at the same time. And I thought, oh, who's that? Why didn't we ever hear this guy's name? I didn't know there was another American financier on the board of Burisma put at the exact same day and time as Hunter and was his partner. So I said, well, let me just Google this guy. And it comes up he was convicted of a major fraud. Major. So then I was like, oh, well, these guys are fraudsters. So I'm going to go back and pull on that string that says he's the most honest guy who ever lived. So what I found was that Biden and Jeffrey Pyatt, who was the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine at the time, were trying to get the Shokin, the prosecutor in Ukraine, Shokin, to investigate. I have the names here. They're kind of hard to remember. Mykola Zlochevsky, who was the sole owner of Burisma. They were trying to get those they were trying to get Shokin to investigate Zlochevsky. So in 2014, I don't know which month, but it was in the beginning, Zlochevsky goes on the run. Pyatt or whoever in London seizes $23 million of his assets, which I'm sure is chicken scratch compared to what the guy's worth, because Burisma Holdings is the largest gas production company privately held in Ukraine. So around the time this guy's run out of town, that's when Hunter and Devin are put on the board. So we don't know if the Burisma guy put him on the board. Probably not, or maybe was coerced into doing so. But anyway, Shokin would not pursue the guy, and because Shokin would not file papers against Burisma against Zlochevsky, London had to release his assets. So the guy got his money, and Shokin, furthermore, started investigating the so-called anti-corruption NGO that Soros and the U.S. government established in Ukraine that was going after Zlochevsky. So there was a Soros U.S. government entity called the Anti-Corruption Action Center going after Burisma. And Shokin said, I'm not only not going after Zlochevsky of Burisma, I'm going after you, because what are you guys up to? And then Biden gets him fired, gets the new guy in, and the new guy said at one point and then retracted that he got a message from the new ambassador saying, don't prosecute the Anti-Corruption Action Center. Don't look into that, and don't go after this or that, like a no prosecution list, so the new guy, who was Lutsenko, I think the guy's name was, the new prosecutor, Lutsenko. Right. Yeah, he also would not go after the Burisma guy. And now, like in 2017, 2018, the Burisma guy came back. And they're still after him. But what I think is happening, because this Anti-Corruption Action Center is one of Soros's organization in Ukraine, but he has two others that he funds that do a similar thing. One called the Kleptocracy Asset Recovery.
It's called the Kleptocracy?
Yes, it's telling you that who they're after are guilty kleptocrats, which they usually are, I think. I think they are going after corrupt people in other countries.
Isn't klepto a thief?
Yeah. Kleptocracy means a government of thieves. So, and then they have the Democracy Integrity Initiative also. So what they do is, this is, in the Ukraine case, Soros and the U.S. government were funding it. I don't know if the U.S. government is funding the other ones, but I know Soros is, or I've read that Soros is. And what they do is they highlight like corrupt people in other countries who have massive amounts of assets, which they probably did get in a corrupt fashion. But instead of like the country where it came from pursuing it through legal means, this like extra legal, non-governmental entity goes in and somehow pressures and gets the assets away from these people. And they say they put them back to the country. But in this case, so this is what the scenario I think was going to play out. What they wanted to play out was they get this guy who owns Burisma on the run. They put Hunter and Devin in there. And when they get him to be convicted or kicked back, they receive, it's not even a conviction. They get his assets frozen and seized, just like we do to drug people here on the charges, not on the conviction. Asset forfeiture, it's a terrible thing. It's stealing. That's kleptocracy.
Yeah.
So what they do is, what I speculate they might have been wanting to do was to get that guy's assets, seize them, leave them in Burisma, cut him out, and then those two guys who have been accused of and implicated in influence peddling, fraud, stuff like that. Hunter's associates have been up to their necks in that stuff.
Yeah.
That what they would do is two things. One is they would be in position as the finance guys to get the fees. And fees for brokering that stuff can be very high. Like 7% is like a normal fee. It's like when you sell your house. So just even legitimately, they could get that. But what happens over there so often, and probably happened, this is probably how Zlochevsky got his ill-gotten gains, and a lot of the Russian oligarchs got their money this way, if not all of them, is that when the state has materials, has assets that are found that have to be put back to the people, or seize assets, or want to privatize a company that used to be government owned, they place those assets with their cronies at below market prices. So they take $2 billion worth of assets and they sell it to you for $500 million. And then at the end of the day, maybe you kick back the guy money. I don't know. I mean, that is accusing like people of a crime, but I'm saying that is something that does happen sometimes. So if you have the assets of this, so they wanted the prosecutor to go after the head of Burisma, I think, so that he would lose the rights to those assets and they would be there to figure out how to allocate those assets and get a piece of the action.
Joe Biden's son would be there.
That's what I think. Yeah. So I don't think it's inconsistent that Biden wanted a prosecutor in there who would go after this guy and get those assets at Burisma. It wasn't going to hurt Hunter. Hunter was going to be there to step into the void, in my opinion.
And Joe Biden does say in that clip at the Brookings Institution, or CFR, that they got the other prosecutor out and they put in a guy that was, I can't remember his exact words. But
he said solid, and he slaps the guy on the shoulder, solid, pointing out that's what a solid thing is, because that guy was a supposed hero of the West. He was in jail from the previous Yanukovych, the previous governor. And then when he got out of jail, when our guys got in, they thought he was our guy. So I think these prosecutors would not go after Zlochevsky, because my guess is Zlochevsky is a dangerous character.
Okay, so
and we talked about the guy, the banker who got suicided in his own backyard in a similar scandal.
So if I'm Jim Jordan, because this is what they're playing over and over again to establish Biden, they're really covering this thing up hardcore for Biden. I mean, they are really trying hard.
But they started it, so I think that it must have been bubbling up to the surface anyway. And I feel like somebody had to have fed Trump. I mean, he doesn't prepare for his own calls. You know what I mean? I wouldn't if I was just a CEO of a company. You know what I mean? You're too busy. So somebody fed him the lines.
Well, what's happened is it was in the story becoming parallel, you ended up researching it and finding deeper narrative, while the mainstream media is confusing the issue and kind of like Snopes presents the wrong question so that they can debunk it, whereas if they had presented the right question, they wouldn't have been able to. So here it appears that you have Jim Jordan coming on saying that, look, Biden is corrupt or possibly corrupt because he withheld $1 billion until they fired a prosecutor who might have been investigating his son.
Exactly. Yes, that's what they're saying, that he was trying to get the prosecutor called off of the Burisma guy, and the other guy comes back and says, no, you've got it wrong. He was trying to get them to sick the Burisma guy.
Okay, so Tapper's response is, no, that's not true. What you said is provably
right.
false.
I'm debunking the whole
right.
Republican
I know exactly.
position.
Yeah. I'm just giving the position that.
I agree. What you're saying is right, because it's confusing on purpose. But that's why, and I wouldn't even just be speculating that this is what they were up to, except for that Soros has those other entities that seem to do exactly that.
So
they did it to Malaysia, and I kept following Malaysia. I was like, who the hell is after Malaysia and why? Why? And I just thought it was geopolitical. And I would say this guy in Malaysia is getting railroaded by the Wall Street Journal and everybody else. And I would get people from Malaysia emailing me saying that guy's a crook. And I'm like, yeah, I know. But what they're saying, like, why are they doing this? He must be on the wrong side of somebody. And so what I think the scam is that they find the actual crooks, which are not hard to find in all of these countries. And the ones that aren't going to give them the payola right up front, they'll go in the back door and just say, we're taking you down. And I'd like to know who's disposing of all those Malaysian assets.
So it's kind of like, it sounds like someone going door to door and confiscating property almost.
That is...
Not unlike George Soros.
Yes, but the property
ago,
that George Soros was confiscating was innocent people.
Yeah, these are
so now he's targeting
politicians.
Unsympathetic people.
Yeah, and big corporations in major countries.
He's refined his technique.
He has. He's gotten
better. But we do know that nothing makes him happier.
Let me ask you one. That's right. It's the best time of his life. One more question, and you might have covered this. It's a very confusing issue.
Right. No, please, because it's complicated.
I've heard them talk about. They've talked about the different attorneys. So
Yeah.
You think they're talking about the same attorney.
They say the prosecutor at the heart of the Trump call. That is what they say. And they're talking about Lutsenko, who's the guy Biden installed. And he says Biden didn't do anything wrong. They're not talking to Shokin, the guy who probably knows what they were up to.
Okay, and the one that they fired is the first one.
Is Shokin. No, Lutsenko. Shokin they fired, and he is never the one there that the mainstream media is talking about.
Okay.
Lutsenko is the guy Biden installed. And he's the one who says Biden's clean. But the way they refer to him, I've seen different outlets say it in the same way. I tweeted it both times. It said, the prosecutor at the heart of the Trump-Ukraine scandal says Biden's clean. But he's not at the heart.
That makes you think it's the one that got fired.
Right. That's why I started looking into it. I just try to clarify because on the WSB show, people call. So if you don't know what you're talking about, you know what I mean? If you don't have callers, it's kind of easy to fudge it. But if you have to be able to understand the whole narrative, that's how I discover all this stuff, because I'm just trying to figure out how to, to make sure I have all the facts right in case I'm challenged on it.
Well, that definitely helps clarify it for me.
Oh, and by the way, I should say that it was a little different but in the same vein as when you discovered that and found through hard work and research on purpose that Stacey Abrams intentionally burned the flag and set back the effort of changing the flag by 10 years.
Sabotaged it.
Yeah, so you brought that out on our show on WSB. And there was no putting that genie back in the bottle. So it was covered. It was covered by the New York Times, covered what you, absolutely no question about, originated with you. But they did not give you credit, because if they gave you credit, people would be able to go back and listen to the show and understand what you were saying, what you found, what it meant, and clear up all the confusion. Instead, they presented it as, look at her, she's such a great civil rights activist. She burned that flag, right? But they wouldn't have understood that she did it, and it set the effort back.
Right. As though if that were true, her claim, her campaign's claim, the New York Times claim, as though that would not have been the central feature of her message if that were actually true.
Right. You wouldn't have had to dig it out.
Yeah.
So I would ask people on this occasion that if you do talk about this story, refer people to us, to the WSB show, to this show. Little something for the effort is always nice, but it will also, it also keeps this confusing story from getting twisted, because what we just said, I wouldn't be surprised if people would refer to what we just said as being what Tapper was saying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So refer people to this week. We're going to play it every day. Like we're going to
It's important that you do this.
Yes, we're going to replay during Drivetime News Class this week, we're going to replay the WSB show where, I spent 2 hours laying out. And it goes deeper. It goes to the Mueller investigation.
It's all connected.
I really turned over a rock with this, and I'm sure it will get twisted or buried. I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but you could help it go someplace. That if you've got a show or write a blog or whatever, tweet,
Yes, let people know, because there is a concerted effort to flip reality on its head.
Yes.
It is over the top and unbelievable, and it's relentless. So if you want to fight for the truth, spread Monica's hard work and digging this stuff up around.
Actually got a little nervous because people were tweeting to lawmakers, "Oh, listen to Monica's show," and I'm like, that might be going too far. I don't want that kind of attention.
I'm okay with that.
I know you are.
Well, thank you for your hard work and uncovering all that stuff. It's very clarifying to me. And you can find your Drive Time News Blast every weekday afternoon at 4 p.m. on thepropreport.com or your favorite podcasting platform with the Propaganda Report podcast feed. We will talk to y'all tomorrow.